Chapters 1 through 4 of the Gospel according to Matthew, from the New Testament in Modern English, translated by Farrar Fenton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapter 1. The record of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, son of David, son of Abraham. Abraham begat Isaac, and Isaac begat Jacob, and Jacob begat Judah and his brothers. And Judah begat Pharez and Zara by Tamar. And Pharez begat Hezrom, and Hezrom begat Aram, and Aram begat Amminadab, and Amminadab begat Naasson, and Naasson begat Salmon, and Salmon begat Boaz by Rahab, and Boaz begat Obed by Ruth, and Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David the king. David the king begat Solomon by the widow of Uriah, and Solomon begat Rehoboam, and Rehoboam begat Abiah, and Abiah begat Asaph, and Asaph begat Joshaphat, and Joshaphat begat Joram, and Joram begat Uzziah, and Uzziah begat Jotham, and Jotham begat Achaz, and Achaz begat Hezekiah, and Hezekiah begat Manasseh, and Manasseh begat Amos, and Amos begat Josiah, and Josiah begat Jeconiah and his brothers about the time of the transportation into Babylon. And after the transportation into Babylon, Jeconiah begat Salathiel, and Salathiel begat Zerubbabel, and Zerubbabel begat Abiud, and Abiud begat Eliakim, and Eliakim begat Azor, and Azor begat Sadoc, and Sadoc begat Achim, and Achim begat Eliud, and Eliud begat Eleazar, and Eleazar begat Mathan, and Mathan begat Jacob, and Jacob begat Joseph, the husband of Mary. From her was born Jesus, the appointed Messiah. Thus all the generations from Abraham to David were 14 generations. And from David to the transportation unto Babylon were 14 generations, and from the transportation into Babylon to the Messiah were 14 generations. However, the origin of Jesus the Messiah was thus. Mary, his mother, was promised in marriage to Joseph, but before their union she was found to have conceived from the Holy Spirit. Her husband Joseph, however, was a righteous man, and not wishing to degrade her, felt inclined to divorce her privately. But while reflecting about it, he saw a messenger from the Lord appear to him during a vision, saying, "Joseph, son of David, you need not be afraid to accept your wife Mary, for what is conceived in her was produced by the Holy Spirit. And she will give birth to a son, and you shall name him Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins." Now all this took place so that the statement of the Lord, as recorded by his prophet, might be fulfilled. "Behold, the virgin shall conceive and give birth to a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel," which, when translated, means "the God among us." Then Joseph, having awakened from his sleep, did as the messenger of the Lord commanded him, and accepted his wife, but kept apart from her until she had given birth to her son, and he named him Jesus. Chapter 2. Soon after the birth of Jesus in Bethlehem of Judea, during the reign of King Herod, there arrived in Jerusalem Magi from the east, who inquired, "Where is the newly born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and we have come to pay him homage." When Herod the king heard this, he was terrified, and all Jerusalem with him. So assembling the chief priests and professors, he demanded of them where the Messiah would be born. They replied, "In Bethlehem of Judea. For it is recorded by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, Judah's land, are not the least among the districts of Judah, for out of you shall come the leader, who shall shepherd my people Israel.'" Then Herod, having privately interviewed the Magi, ascertained from them the exact time when the star made its appearance. He then sent them to Bethlehem, remarking, "When you arrive, ascertain very carefully everything about that child, And when you have discovered all, inform me, so that I may also come and pay him homage." Having listened to the king, they accordingly proceeded on their way, and observed that the star which they had seen at its rising went before them, until arriving, it rested above the place where the child was. When they observed the star, they rejoiced with very great delight. And having come to the house, they saw the young child with his mother Mary, and prostrating themselves, they paid him homage. And having opened their treasures, they presented him with gold, frankincense, and myrrh as a tribute. And having been instructed by a dream not to return to Herod, they accordingly departed to their own country by another road. After their departure, a messenger from the Lord also appeared to Joseph in a vision, saying, "Arise, take the child and his mother, and fly to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is about to hunt out the child to murder him." Arising, he accordingly took the child and his mother by night, and removed to Egypt, remaining there until the death of Herod, so that the statement from the Lord through the prophet might be fulfilled, which declared, "I called my son out of Egypt." Then Herod, when he found that he had been deceived by the Magi, was savagely furious, and sending to Bethlehem, he murdered all the male children there, as well as all that were in the neighborhood, from 2 years of age and under, so as to include the date which he had ascertained from the Magi. Then was fulfilled what was spoken through the prophet Jeremiah. "I heard a sound of grief in Ramah, weeping and great anguish, Rachel weeping for her children, and she cannot be consoled, because they are not." When Herod was dead, however, a messenger of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a vision while in Egypt, and said, "Arise, take the child and his mother, and go into the land of Israel, for they are dead who sought the child's life." He then arose, took the child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. Hearing, however, that Archelaus reigned over Judea in the place of his father Herod, he was afraid to return there. And having been also warned by a dream, he withdrew into the district of Galilee. And on arriving, he settled in a town called Nazareth, so that the prediction through the prophet was fulfilled which said that he should be considered a Nazarene. Chapter 3. Some time after this period, John the Baptizer began to proclaim in the desert of Judea, "Reform, for the kingdom of heaven is near." This man was the one foretold by the prophet Isaiah, where he says, "A voice calling out in the desert, prepare the road for the Lord, make straight the pathway for his feet." Now John himself had his clothing of camel's hair, with a leather belt around his waist, and his food was locusts and wild honey. Then Jerusalem and the people about Judea, as well as the whole neighborhood of Jordan, went to him, and were baptized by him in the Jordan, when they had confessed their sins. But observing many of the Pharisees and Sadducees coming to his baptism, he addressed them, saying, "Spawn of vipers! Who has directed you to fly from the future fury? Produce then fruit displaying your conversion, and do not in your pride say to yourselves, 'We have our ancestor Abraham.' For I tell you that God is able even from these stones to raise up children to Abraham. But the axe now lies at the root of the trees. Every tree, therefore, which does not produce good fruit will be cut down and thrown into the fire. I indeed baptize you in water, preparatory to conversion. But the one who follows me is far stronger than I. I am not even worthy to carry his shoes. He will baptize you in the Holy Spirit and fire. His winnower is in his hand, and he will perfectly cleanse his threshing floor, and collect his wheat into the granary, while he will consume the chaff with inextinguishable fire." Jesus also came from Galilee to the Jordan, applying to John to be baptized by him. John, however, wished to dissuade him, saying, "It is more necessary for me to be baptized by you, and yet you would come to me?" But Jesus replied, "Allow it for the present, for it is appointed thus to us to do all that is right." He then permitted him. And when Jesus had been baptized, he immediately came out from the water, and the heavens were opened to him, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove, and coming and resting upon him. And then a voice from the heavens said, "This is my Son, my beloved, in whom I have delight." Chapter 4. Jesus then went up into the desert under the influence of the Spirit, to be tried by the agency of the devil. And having fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he at last became hungry. The tempter then approached him and said, "If you are a Son of God, order these stones to become loaves." But Jesus in reply said, "It is written, man does not live on bread alone, but upon every word passing through the mouth of God." Then the devil, carrying him into the holy city, placed him upon the high porch of the temple, and said to him, "If you are a Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is recorded that he will command his angels concerning you, to support you with their hands, so that you cannot dash your foot against the pavement." Jesus in reply to him said, "And it is elsewhere written, you shall not tempt the Lord your God." Again the devil, carrying him up a very high mountain, pointed out to him all the kingdoms of that region, and the splendor of them, and said to him, "I will give you all these, if you will pay me homage." But Jesus in reply to him said, "Begone, Satan! For it is written, you shall reverence the Lord and pay homage to him alone." The devil then left him, and angels at once approached and ministered to him. Now Jesus, having heard that John was betrayed, moved into Galilee, and leaving Nazareth he went to live in Capernaum by the sea, in the borders of Zebulun and Naphtali, so that the prediction delivered through the prophet Isaiah might be fulfilled, which says, "Over the Jordan, near the sea, in the land of Zebulun and Naphtali's land, in the heathen Galilee, the people living in darkness saw a great light, while in solitude crouched and the shadow of death, a light has before them burst out." From that time Jesus began to proclaim and say, "Change your minds, for the kingdom of heaven approaches." While walking along the coast of the Sea of Galilee, he observed 2 brothers, Simon surnamed Peter, and his brother Andrew, throwing a casting net into the sea, for they were fishermen. Speaking to them, he said, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." And immediately abandoning their nets, they followed him. And going from there he saw 2 other brothers, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, in the boat along with their father, mending their nets. And he hailed them. And at once abandoning the boat and their father, they followed him. Jesus then went through all Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, as well as curing every kind of disease and infirmity among the people. And the report about him spread throughout all Syria, and they brought to him all those who were afflicted with different mental diseases and sufferings, demoniacs, lunatics, and paralytics, and he restored them to health. And great crowds followed him from Galilee, Decapolis, Jerusalem, and Judea, as well as from the other side of the Jordan. The end of chapters 1 through 4. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapters 5 through 8 of the Gospel according to Matthew, from the New Testament in modern English, translated by Farrar Fenton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapter 5. Now observing those crowds, he ascended the hill, and seating himself, his disciples approached him. Then, having opened his mouth, he addressed them as follows. "Blessed are the gentle in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the sufferers, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the kind-hearted, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the hungering and thirsting for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall secure mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God himself. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be declared God's own sons. Blessed are the persecuted on account of righteousness, because the kingdom of heaven is theirs. You are blessed whenever they curse and persecute you, and say every vile thing against you falsely because of me. Be glad and delighted, because your reward in heaven will be great. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt should lose its strength, with what can itself be salted? It is then good for nothing but to be flung out and trodden under foot by mankind. You are the light of the world. A town built upon a hill cannot be concealed. A lamp is never lighted and placed under a corn measure, but upon the lampstand, and it gives light to all those in the house. Thus let your light shine in the presence of mankind, so that they may see your good conduct and praise your Father who is in heaven. Do not imagine that I have come to abolish the law and the prophets. I have not come to abolish, but to complete them. For I tell you indeed that until the heavens and the earth shall pass away, a single dot or hair stroke shall not disappear from the law until all has been completed. If therefore anyone shall make light of one of the least of its commands, and shall teach men so, he shall be declared the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever teaches them and acts up to them, he shall be great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that if your righteousness does not surpass that of the professors and Pharisees, you can by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. You have heard that it was said by the ancients, "You shall not murder," and if a man should murder, he would be liable to punishment. But I tell you that every man quarreling with his brother will be liable to punishment. And if he should call his brother scoundrel, he will be liable to the high court of justice. And whoever shall call his brother rebel will be liable to the branding by fire. Therefore, even if you have carried your offering up to the altar, and you should there discover that your brother has suffered any wrong by you, leave your offering even before the altar and go away. First be reconciled to your brother, and then returning, present your offering. Make friends with your accuser quickly, even while you are in his company. For your accuser may drag you before the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and he in turn may take you to prison. I tell you indeed that you will not depart until you have repaid the very last farthing. You have heard it said that you shall not commit adultery. But I tell you that everyone who looks lewdly upon a woman has already committed adultery with her in his own heart. If therefore your right eye leads you to sin, tear it out and throw it from you. For it will be profitable to you to destroy one of your members, rather than that your whole body should perish in the pit. And if your right hand leads you to sin, cut it off and throw it from you. For it will be profitable for you to destroy one of your limbs, rather than that your whole body should perish in the pit. It has also been decreed that if anyone would dismiss his wife, let him have her divorced. But I tell you that if anyone divorces his wife, except on account of fornication, he represents her to be an adulteress. And if anyone marries her when she has been divorced, he commits adultery. Again, you have heard it was decreed to the ancients that you shall not perjure yourselves, but give up your vow to the Lord. But I tell you in short, do not vow at all, not by heaven, for that is the throne of God, nor by the earth, because that is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for that is the city of the great King. Neither vow by your head, because you are not able to make a single hair white or black. But let your language be, yes, yes, no, no. For whatever exceeds these proceeds from evil. You have heard that it was enacted, eye for eye and tooth for tooth. But I tell you, do not contend with the wicked. But whoever strikes you upon your right cheek, then turn the other to him as well. And whoever drags you to law and takes your vest, let him have your cloak as well. And whoever forces you to go with him 1 mile, then go 2. Give to the man who begs from you, and do not turn away from the one wishing to borrow from you. You have heard it was commanded that you should love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you to love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Act generally to those who hate you, and pray for those who ill use and persecute you. Then you will become the sons of your Father who is in heaven. For he raises his sun over both bad and good, and rains upon both just and unjust. For if you should merely be friendly with your friends, what reward have you? Is not the same thing done even by the extortioners? And if you salute your associates only, is that anything to be proud of? For is not that done even by the extortioners? You, however, should be perfect, as your Father in heaven is perfect. Chapter 6. Take care and do not display your charities before men, with the intention of being observed by them. For if you do, you will not have a reward from your Father who is in heaven. When therefore you do a kindness, do not blow a trumpet before yourself, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, so that they may secure the praise of men. I tell you, however, that they obtain their reward. But whenever you do a kindness, do not let your left hand know what your right hand does, so that your kindness may be secret, and your Father who looks into the secret will return it to you openly. And when you pray, do not follow the example of the hypocrites, for they delight to pray standing in the crowds and at the corners of the squares, so that they may be seen by men. I tell you, however, that they receive their wages. But when you pray, enter your chamber, and having shut your door, pray to your Father in that privacy. And your Father, seeing into that privacy, will return it to you openly. But when praying, make use of no babble, like the heathen, for they imagine that they will be listened to because of their volubility. Do not therefore imitate them, for your Father knows your necessities before you can ask him. Consequently, you must pray in this way. Our Father in the heavens, your name must be being hallowed. Your kingdom must be being restored. Your will must be being done both in heaven and upon the earth. Give us today our tomorrow's bread, and forgive us our faults, as we forgive those offending us. For you would not lead us into temptation, but deliver us from its evil. For if you forgive men their faults, your heavenly Father will forgive you yours. But if you do not forgive those who wrong you, then neither will your Father forgive you your misdeeds. Moreover, when you fast, become not like the hypocrites, for they distort their faces so that it may be seen by men that they are fasting. I tell you, however, that they receive their wages. But when you are fasting, dress your head and wash your face, so that men may not know you are fasting, but only your Father who is in the secret. And your Father who observes in secret will reward you. Do not hoard up for yourselves treasure upon the earth, where moth and canker destroy, and where thieves may burrow through and steal. But store up your treasure in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroy, and where thieves cannot dig through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. The eye is the lamp of the body. If therefore your eye is sound, your whole body will be illuminated. But if your eye is diseased, your whole body will be in darkness. Consequently, if your sight is defective, all your body will be darkness. No man can serve two masters, for either he will dislike the one and be fond of the other, or else he will honor the one and despise the other. So you are not able to serve both God and mammon. Because of this I tell you, do not embitter your lives how you shall eat, how you shall drink, nor respecting your body how you shall be clothed. Is not the life more important than the food, and the body itself than its clothing? Just look at the birds in the sky. They neither sow nor reap, nor collect into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more important than they? Yet who among you by fretting is able to add a single foot to his height? And why should you fret about clothing? Reflect upon the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. And yet I tell you that even Solomon in all his glory arrayed not himself like one of them. If therefore God so clothes the flowers of the field, which flourish today, and tomorrow are thrown into the fire, how much more you of little faith? Never therefore fret, saying, What shall we eat? What shall we drink? Nor, How shall we find clothing? For the heathen hunt eagerly for all these. Your heavenly Father knows that you need them all. But first secure the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be ready for you. Do not therefore fret about tomorrow, for the morrow has its own trouble. The care of each day by itself is quite enough. Chapter 7. Condemn not, so that you may not be condemned. For according to the sentence you pronounce, you will yourself be convicted, and with the same measure with which you measure, you will be measured. But why do you take notice of the dust in your brother's eye, while you cannot observe the chip in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me remove the dust from your eye, while the chip is in your own eye? Pretender! First remove the chip from your own eye, and then you will see straight to remove the dust from the eye of your brother. Give not what is holy to dogs, nor throw your pearls before swine, for fear they should trample them under their feet, and turning, rend you. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it will be opened to you. For whoever asks will receive, and the seeker will find, and they will open to him who knocks. Is there even a man among you who, if his son should ask bread of him, would hand him a stone? And if he asked a fish, would he hand him a serpent? If therefore you who are corrupt know how to bestow benefits upon your children, how much rather will your Father who is in heaven give benefits to those who ask him? Whatever therefore you wish men to do to you, do the same yourselves to them. For this is the law and the prophets. Enter through the narrow gate, because the gate is wide and the road well paved that leads to destruction, and through it the majority go. How narrow the gate and difficult the path that leads to life, and they are few who find it. But guard yourselves from the false teachers who come to you in sheep's clothing, but who in their hearts are plundering wolves. You can recognize them by their fruits. Do they ever gather grapes from thorns or figs from thistles? Thus, every useful tree produces useful fruit, but the worthless tree produces worthless fruit. A useful tree cannot produce bad fruit, nor can a worthless tree produce good fruit. Every tree not producing good fruit will be felled and used as firewood. Reject their produce, for by this you can recognize them. Not everyone who says to me, Master, Master, will enter into the kingdom of heaven, but only those who do the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Master, Master, have we not preached in your name, and have we not cast out demons in your name, and in your name have we not done many wonders? And then I shall declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you traders in lawlessness. Therefore, everyone who listens to these precepts of mine and practices them, I will compare him to a reflective man who built his house upon the rock. And the storm raged, and the floods came, and the wind blew and assailed that house. And it fell not, because it was founded upon the rock. And everyone who listens to these precepts of mine and does not practice them, I will compare him to a foolish man who built his dwelling in the sand. And the storm raged, and the floods came, and the wind blew, and they demolished that house, and its wreck was complete. And it came about that when Jesus had finished these addresses, the crowd were astonished at his teaching, for he had been teaching them like a man possessing authority, and not as their professors. Chapter 8. Now when he descended from the hill, a great crowd followed him, and a leper also approaching bowed to him and said, Master, if you will, you are able to cure me. And Jesus, extending his hand, touched him, saying, I am willing. Be cured. And at once he was relieved from his leprosy. Jesus then said to him, Take care and tell no one about this, but go at once, show yourself to the priest, and present the offering appointed by Moses as an evidence to these people. When he was entering Capernaum, a captain approached, and addressing him, said, Master, my boy lies in the house paralyzed, in great anguish. And Jesus in reply to him said, I will come and cure him. The captain answering, however, declared, I am not a sufficient rank, sir, for you to come under my roof, Rather order it only by a word, and my son will be restored. Although I am a man under a superior officer, I have soldiers under myself, and I say to this man, Go, and he goes, to another, Come, and he comes, and to my servant, Do this, and he does it." When Jesus heard this, he was surprised and said to his followers, "Indeed, I tell you, I have never found such faith as this in Israel. I also tell you that many shall come from the east and west, and shall recline together with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven, when the sons of the kingdom shall be flung into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Then Jesus said to the captain, "Go back, and as you have believed, it shall come to you." And the boy was cured from that very hour. When Jesus entered the house of Peter, he saw his mother-in-law on a couch and suffering from a fever. And as he touched her hand, the fever left her, and she arose and served him. Then when evening came, they brought to him many demoniacs, and he cast out the spirits with a word, and he cured all those who were sick, so that the statement made through Isaiah the prophet was verified. He took away our weaknesses and endured our mental diseases. Once Jesus, seeing great crowds around him, gave instructions to cross over to the farther shore. Then a lawyer approaching said to him, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you may go." In reply, Jesus said to him, "The foxes have holes, and the birds of the sky have roosts, while the Son of Man has not a place where he can lay his head." And another of his disciples said to him, "Master, allow me first to return and bury my father." But Jesus said to him, "Follow me, and let the dead bury their own dead." Then himself embarking in the vessel, his disciples followed him. And soon after, a hurricane swept across the lake so that the boat was overwhelmed by the waves. But he slept. And the disciples approaching awoke him, calling out, "Lord, save us! We are perishing!" In reply, he exclaimed, "What cowards you are! How weak your faith is!" Then getting up, he commanded the winds and the sea, and perfect calm ensued. And the men expressed wonder, saying, "What kind of a man is this? For even the wind and the sea obey him." On landing with him at the other side, in the district of the Gadarenes, 2 demoniacs coming out of the tombs opposed him. They were very savage, and none were able to pass that road. And they howled out, exclaiming, "What is there between you and us, Jesus, Son of God? Do you come here before the time to punish us?" Now there was pasturing at a distance a large herd of swine. And the demons calling out to him said, "If you cast us out, allow us to go away into that herd of swine." "Begone!" said he to them. They accordingly departed, went into the swine, and at once all the herd rushed down the slope into the lake, and perished in the water. The feeders then fled, and arriving at the village, reported everything, including what had befallen to those demoniacs. And accordingly all the town went out to meet Jesus, and seeing him, they begged that he would depart from their locality. The end of chapters 5 through 8. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapters 9 through 12 of the Gospel according to Matthew, from the New Testament in modern English, translated by Farrar Fenton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapter 9. Consequently, embarking in the boat, he recrossed and came to his own town. And then they brought to him a paralytic lying upon a rug. And when Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, "Take heart, man, your sins are forgiven you." Some of the professors, however, muttered to themselves, "The man blasphemes." But Jesus, reading their thoughts, replied, "Why do you think evil in your hearts? For which is easier to say, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or to say, 'Arise and walk'? But in order that you may see that the Son of Man has authority to forgive sins upon earth." He then said to the paralytic, "Rise up, "Take your rug and go into your own house." And having got up, he went into his house. Then when the crowd saw it, they were astonished, and they gave praise to God who had given such power to men. And passing on from there, Jesus saw a man named Matthew sitting at the custom house, and he said to him, "Follow me." And arising, he did follow him. It so happened that while he reclined in the house, several tax farmers and reprobates, arriving, reclined with Jesus and his disciples. And the Pharisees, observing it, said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat along with those tax farmers and sinners?" But Jesus, having heard it, replied, "The healthy have no need of a physician, but only those who are sick. Go, however, and learn what this means. I desire mercy rather than sacrifice, for I have not come to invite righteous men, but sinners." The disciples of John afterwards approached him, inquiring, "Why do we and the Pharisees often fast, while your disciples never fast?" In reply, Jesus said to them, "The groomsmen must not be distressed while the bridegroom is with them. But the time will come when the bridegroom will depart, and they can then fast. Further, no one patches an old coat with a bit of new felt, for the patch would disfigure the coat and be worse than the whole. Neither do they pour new wine into old wineskins, for if they did, the skins would burst, the wine be spilt, and the skins destroyed. On the contrary, they pour new wine into new wineskins, and both are safe together." While he was thus speaking to them, a nobleman, arriving, bowed to him, saying, "My daughter is almost dead. However, if you come and place your hand upon her, she will live." And Jesus, rising, followed him with his disciples. Then a woman who had suffered from hemorrhage for 12 years, approaching him from behind, touched the hem of his robe, for she said to herself, "If I can but touch his robe, I shall be cured." Jesus, however, turned, and seeing her, said, "Cheer up, daughter. Your faith has saved you." And the woman was cured from that very hour. When Jesus arrived at the house of the nobleman and found the musicians and the crowd lamenting, he said to them, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, but has fainted." And they laughed at him in ridicule. But when he had dismissed the crowd, entering, he took her hand and raised the girl, and the report of it went through the whole of that district. And when Jesus withdrew from there, 2 blind men followed him, calling out and saying, "Pity us, Son of David." Then when he had entered the house, the blind men came to him, and Jesus asked them, "Do you believe that I can do this?" "Yes, sir," was their answer. He then touched their eyes, remarking, "As your faith, so shall the result be." And their eyes were opened, and Jesus enjoined them to take care and inform no one about it. But they, departing, published his fame through all that neighborhood. Then as soon as they went out, there was brought to him a dumb man, a demoniac. And when he had cast out the demon, the dumb man spoke, and the astonished crowd exclaimed, "Nothing like this has ever appeared in Israel." The Pharisees, however, remarked, "By the prince of the demons, he casts out the demons." Jesus then went about all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, as well as curing every mental disease and every sickness. Observing the crowds, however, he felt pity for them, because they were harassed and abandoned like shepherdless sheep. He therefore said to his disciples, "The harvest is indeed plentiful, but the workmen are few. Ask therefore the owner of the harvest, so that he may send workmen to his harvest." Chapter 10. Then calling together his 12 disciples, he gave them power over unclean spirits, so that they might cast them out, as well as cure every kind of mental disease and all sickness. Now these are the names of those 12 apostles. First, Simon, surnamed Peter, and Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax farmer, James the son of Alphaeus, and Lebbaeus, surnamed Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanite, and Judas the Iscariot, who also betrayed him. Jesus sent out these 12, giving them these instructions: Do not turn aside into the heathen districts, nor enter the towns of the Samaritans, but rather go to the lost sheep of Israel's house. And as you travel, proclaim the fact that the kingdom of heaven is approaching. Restore the feeble, cure the lepers, cast out demons. You have received freely, give freely. Provide neither gold, nor silver, nor copper in your purses, nor yet a bag for the journey, nor 2 cloaks, nor shoes, nor staff, for the workman is worthy of his food. And into whatever town or village you may enter, inquire who in it is of good repute. Stay there until you leave it. And when entering a house, show respect to it. And if the family are worthy of you, let your blessing come upon it. But if it should prove unworthy, keep your blessing to yourselves. And if it will not receive you nor listen to your discourse, departing from that family or that town, shake the dust from your feet. I tell you indeed that it will be more endurable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that town. I now send you like sheep into the midst of wolves. Be you therefore wise as serpents, and harmless as doves. But guard yourselves from those men, for they will take you to the police courts, and will flog you in their synagogues. And you will be dragged before governors and kings because of me, so that you may give evidence to them and to the heathen about me. But when they betray you, do not trouble as to what you can say, for in that hour you will be instructed what to say. You are not the speakers, but the Spirit of your Father will plead from within you. Then brother will betray brother to death, and father his child, and children will rise up against parents and murder them. And you shall be hated by all for my name's sake, but whoever endures to the end will be saved. When, however, they persecute you in this town, fly into the other, for I assure you that you will not have completed the cities of Israel until the Son of Man comes. The scholar is not greater than his teacher, nor a servant above his master. It is enough if the scholar can become equal to his teacher, and the servant equal to his master. If they call the master of the house Beelzebul, how much rather his attendants? Be not therefore afraid of them, for there is nothing concealed that will not be displayed, nor hidden which shall not become known. What I say to you in the darkness, speak in the light, and what is whispered to your ear, proclaim it upon the housetops. And do not shrink in fear from those who kill the body, for they are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him who has power to destroy both soul and body in the pit. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a farthing? And not one of them has fallen to the ground without your Father. And even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear not, therefore, you are worth many sparrows. Consequently, whoever declares for me before men, I also will recognize him before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I will also deny him before my Father who is in heaven. Do not conclude that I have come to send peace upon the earth. I have not come to send peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and the bride against her mother-in-law, and the enemies of every man will be his own relatives. Whoever prefers his father or his mother before me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever will not take up his cross and follow me is unworthy of me. Whoever finds his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake shall find it. Who receives you receives me, and my entertainer entertains the one who sent me. When a man entertains a prophet, he will receive a prophet's reward, and whoever receives the righteous because he is righteous will receive a righteous reward. And if any give one of the least of them but a drink of cold water because he is a disciple, I tell you indeed that he shall not go unrewarded. Chapter 11. Now it came about that when Jesus had finished giving instructions to his 12 disciples, he dismissed them to teach and preach in their own towns. When John heard in the prison the doings of the Messiah, he sent 2 of his own disciples to ask him, "Are you the coming one, or must we expect another?" And Jesus in reply said to them, "When you return, report to John what you have heard and seen. The blind see, the lame walk, the lepers are cured, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and to the poor is given hope. And happy is he who will not be ashamed of me." But when they had gone, Jesus began to say to the crowd concerning John, "What did you go out to the desert to see? A reed dancing under the wind? But what did you go out to see? A man attired in fine clothes? Those, however, who wear fine clothing are in the houses of kings. What then did you go to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and far more than a prophet. For he is the one about whom it is written, 'See, I will send my messenger before your face, who will prepare your way before you.' I tell you indeed, that there has not been born of women a more exalted than John the Baptizer. Yet the very least in the kingdom of heaven is more exalted than he. But since the days of John the Baptizer until now, the kingdom of heaven is stormed, and the stormers will seize it. For all the prophets as well as the law foretold as far as John. And if you will accept it, he is the Elijah who was to come. Let all hear who have ears to hear. But to what shall I liken this generation? It is like children sitting in the markets, calling out to their mates and saying, 'We have piped to you, but you are not dancing. We have mourned to you, but you will not lament.' John came neither eating nor drinking, and so they say, 'He has a demon.' The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, 'Look, what a greedy, drunken fellow, a friend of tax farmers and blackguards.' Yet wisdom is justified by her children." He then began to reproach the towns in which most of his powers had been displayed, because they were not converted. "Alas for you, Chorazin! Alas for you, Bethsaida! Because if the powers displayed in you had been shown in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented in sackcloth and ashes. I tell you further that it will be more endurable for Tyre and Sidon in the day of judgment than for you. And you, Capernaum, who have been raised as high as the heaven, will be thrown down as low as the grave. For if the powers which were displayed in you had been brought to Sodom, it would have existed until now. Nay, more, I tell you that it will be easier for the land of the Sodomites in the day of judgment than for you." Jesus at that time reflecting said, "I fully acknowledge your wisdom, Father, Lord of the heavens and of the earth, that you have hidden these things from the intelligent and clever, but have made them known to simple men. Yes, Father, for thus it was decided of old by you. All has been committed to me under my Father, and none except the Father fully knows the Son, and none fully knows the Father but the Son, and the one to whom the Son will decide to reveal him. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and kind-hearted. And you will find rest for your souls, because my yoke is easy and my burden light." Chapter 12. When Jesus was walking at that time through the cornfields on the Sabbath, his disciples, being hungry, began to pluck the ears of corn and eat them. The Pharisees, seeing it, however, said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what the law forbids to be done on the Sabbath." But in reply he said to them, "Do you not know what David did when he and those with him were hungry, how he entered the house of God and ate the shewbread, which it was not permissible for him, nor yet for his attendants to eat, but the priests alone? Or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath the sacrificing priests may break the Sabbath and be blameless? But here I tell you there is something more important than the temple. If, however, you had been acquainted with the text, 'I desire mercy rather than sacrifice,' you would not have condemned the innocent, for the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." Then taking his departure, he entered their synagogue, and a man with a paralyzed hand happening to be there, they asked of him if it was allowable to effect a cure on the Sabbath, so that they might incriminate him. But in reply he said to them, "Who is there among you that has a single sheep, and if it should fall into a ditch on the Sabbath, would not get hold of it and lift it out? By how much does a man differ from a sheep? Therefore it is allowable to do a kindness on the Sabbath." He then said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He accordingly extended it, and it was restored to soundness like the other one. The Pharisees consequently consulted together against him, so as to find out a means of murdering him. But Jesus, knowing it, removed from there. And great crowds following him, he cured them all, and enjoined them not to make him known, so that the prediction delivered through Isaiah the prophet might be verified. Observe my Son, whom I have chosen, my beloved, in whom my soul delights. I will put my Spirit into him, and he shall proclaim justice to the heathen. He will neither wrangle nor contend, nor shall any hear his shouting in the streets. He will not crush a bruised reed, nor extinguish a flickering light, until he leads justice to victory, and in his name shall the nations hope. They then brought to him a blind and dumb demoniac, and he cured him, so that the blind and dumb both spoke and saw. And all the crowd were astonished, and said, Must not this be the son of David? But the Pharisees who heard it replied, This fellow does not cast out demons except by the help of Beelzebul, who rules over those demons. Then Jesus, who read their thoughts, answered them, Any kingdom divided against itself is desolated, and no city or house divided against itself can hold together. So if Satan expel Satan, he is divided against himself. How therefore can his kingdom hold together? And if I cast out demons through the help of Beelzebul, by whose help do your own followers cast them out? By that they should be your judges. But if I, by a divine energy, cast out the demons, then the kingdom of God has burst out above you. How indeed can anyone enter the house of that strong man and destroy his armaments, unless he can first overpower his strength? Then he may plunder his dwelling. Whoever is not on my side is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters. Because of this I tell you, every sin and blasphemy will be forgiven to men, but the blasphemy of the Spirit will never be forgiven to men. And if one gives expression to a thought against the Son of Man, he may be forgiven. But if one shall speak insultingly of the Holy Spirit, it shall not be forgiven him, neither at the present time nor in the future. Assume the tree to be good when its fruit is good, or assume that the tree is worthless when its fruit is worthless. For the tree is known by its fruit. You venomous breed! How can you preach purity when you are yourselves depraved? For the mouth speaks from the overflow of the heart. The beneficent man draws from his treasury of purity goodness, and the depraved man can only produce depravity from his stores of depravity. I tell you, however, that every vile idea that men give expression to, they shall render a reason for it in the day of judgment. For by your thoughts you will be acquitted, and by your thoughts you will be convicted. Some of the professors and Pharisees then addressed him, saying, Teacher, we wish to see a sign from you. But in reply he said to them, Does a depraved and debauched race ask for a divine sign? None, however, will be given it other than the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was for 3 days and 3 nights in the hold of the whale, thus shall the Son of Man be for 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. The men of Nineveh shall rise up in the judgment against this generation and convict it, for they reformed under the preaching of Jonah, and now a mightier than Jonah is here. The queen of the south shall rise up in the judgment against this generation and convict it, because she came from the most distant parts of the earth to learn the wisdom of Solomon. And yet a greater than Solomon is here. When, however, the foul spirit has gone out from a man, it wanders about in waterless places, seeking rest, and finding none. Then it reflects, I will return to my house from which I came. And returning, he finds it quite ready for him, cleaned and decorated. He accordingly goes and takes along with him 7 other spirits more depraved than himself, and entering, they live there. And the last state of that man is worse than the first. It will be the same with this debased race. While he was still speaking to the crowd, his mother and his brothers stood outside, desiring to speak with him. And someone said to him, See, your mother and brothers are outside, wishing to speak to you. Addressing the one who told him, however, he asked, Who is my mother, and who are my brothers? Then extending his hand in the direction of his disciples, he said, Why, those are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father who is in heaven, he is my brother, and sister, and mother. The end of chapters 9 through 12. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapters 13 through 16 of the Gospel according to Matthew, from the New Testament in Modern English, translated by Farrar Fenton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapter 13. At this time, however, Jesus, going out from the house, sat down by the sea. And a great crowd collected about him, so that he ascended into a boat and sat down in it, while all the crowd stood upon the shore. And he spoke many things to them in parables, saying, It happened that a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some fell by the roadside, and the birds came and devoured it. Another part fell upon stony land, where the soil was not deep enough, and it sprouted very quickly on account of the shallowness of the soil. But when the sun arose, it was scorched, and it also withered for want of root. And another lot fell among the thistles, and the thistles grew up and choked it. But the rest fell upon good land, and produced grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. Whoever has ears to hear, let him listen. His disciples, approaching him, afterwards asked, Why do you speak to them in parables? Because, he answered, it is granted to you to become acquainted with the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but it is not granted to others. For whoever has a possession, it will increase with him. But the one who possesses nothing, even what he has will be torn from him. I therefore speak to them in parables, because seeing they see not, and hearing they do not hear, neither will they understand. Thus by them is verified the prophecy of Isaiah, which says, Listen to a sound and never understand it, and seeing, see, but never perceive. For the heart of this people is stupefied, and they listen with loaded ears, and their eyes they have closed, fearing they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their hearts, and turn back, and I would restore them. But your eyes are happy because they see, and your ears because they can listen. For I tell you truly that many prophets and good men have ardently desired to see what you see, and have not seen it, and to hear what you hear, and have not heard it. Listen therefore to the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the message of the kingdom of heaven and does not comprehend, the devil comes and snatches what was scattered in his heart. Thus it is with that sown along the roadside. But that sown upon stony land, that is the one who hears the discourse, and accepts it immediately with pleasure. But being without root in himself, he is therefore temporary, and when trouble or persecution comes against the truth, he at once falls away. Now as to what was sown among the thistles, that is the one who listens to the message, but the anxieties of this age and the slavedom of wealth suffocate the message, and it becomes fruitless. Now as to that which falls upon good soil, that is the man who listens to the reason and comprehends it. He consequently produces grain, it may be to the extent of 100, 60, or 30-fold. Continuing, he put before them another parable. I may compare the kingdom of heaven to a man sowing good seed in his field. But while his men were asleep, his enemy came and sowed darnel weeds among the wheat, and went away. However, when the plant shot out, and should have produced grain, then the weeds were also seen. Then his servants coming to the farmer asked him, Did you not, sir, sow perfect seed in your field? Then where did the weeds come from? And in reply to them he said, Some enemy must have done this. His servants then asked, Do you wish us to go and pull them up? No, was his reply, lest while you are plucking up the weeds, you should uproot the wheat along with them. Allow both of them to grow together until the harvest, and during the harvest I will say to the reapers, First collect the weeds and bind them into bundles to burn, but store up the wheat into my granaries. He also told them another parable, saying, The kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard, which a man took and sowed in his field. This is the smallest of such seeds, but when it grows up, it is the largest of all garden herbs, and becomes a bush, so that the birds of the air come and shelter among its branches. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast which a woman took and mixed in 3 stones of flour, so that the whole was fermented by it. Jesus spoke the whole of this to the crowd in parables, and without a parable he seldom spoke to them, so that the statement delivered through the prophet might be fulfilled, which says, I will open my mouth in parables, I will dig up what has been hidden from the foundation of the world. Then Jesus, sending the crowd away, went into the house, and his disciples came to him, saying, Explain to us the parable of the weeds in the field. And replying to them, he said, The sower of the perfect seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The perfect seed are the sons of the kingdom. The weeds are the sons of the wicked, while the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the completion of the age, and the reapers are the angels. Just as they collect the weeds and burn them, so it will be at the end of this period. The Son of Man will send his messengers and will collect out of his kingdom every offensive thing and whatever causes sin, and will throw them into the furnace of fire, where will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous shall shine out like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Let all listen who have ears to hear. Again, the kingdom of heaven is comparable to a buried treasure in a field, which, if a man finds, he covers up. And in his delight he goes and sells whatever he possesses to enable him to buy that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant on the lookout for valuable pearls, who, having found a particular one of very great value, goes and disposes of all the others he has, and buys it. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a dragnet, which has been spread out in the sea, and collects all kinds. Then, when full, they draw it up on the beach, and sitting down they collect the good into baskets, and cast the bad away. Thus it will be at the completion of the period. The angels will pick out and carry away the wicked from the midst of the righteous, and throw them into the furnace of fire. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Do you, asked Jesus, understand all this? Yes, Lord, was their reply. Since that is the case, he further said to them, every teacher who has been trained into the kingdom of heaven is like one who is the master of a house, who brings out from his stores what is new, as well as what is old. Now when Jesus had finished these parables, he removed from there, and coming into his own country, he taught them in their synagogue. And so greatly astonished were they, that they asked, Where has this man acquired this knowledge and power? Is he not the son of that carpenter? Is not his mother called Mary, and his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judah? And his sisters, are they not all here with us? Where then did he attain all this? And they were embarrassed concerning him. Jesus, however, said to them, A prophet is not without honor except in his own country and in his own house. And he did not display much power there, because of their unbelief. Chapter 14. About this time Herod the Tetrarch heard the report concerning Jesus, and said to his companions, This is John the Baptizer. He must have risen from the dead, and therefore the powers energize him. For Herod had arrested John, put him in chains, and sent him to prison on account of Herodia, the wife of his own brother Philip, because John had told him, It is not legal for you to have her. And although wishing to murder him, he was afraid of the people, because all honored him as a prophet. At Herod's birthday feast, however, the daughter of Herodia danced before the guests, and delighted Herod. He thereupon promised with an oath to give her whatever she might ask. And she, having been previously instigated by her mother, said, Give me here upon a dish the head of John the Baptizer. The king was horrified, but because of his oaths and those who reclined with him, he ordered it to be given to her. And sending, he beheaded John in the prison. And his head was brought upon a dish and handed to the girl, and she carried it to her mother. His disciples then came forward, took the body, and buried it, and went to report it to Jesus. And Jesus, hearing it, went away privately in a boat to a desert place. But the people having become aware of it, they followed him by land from the towns. When Jesus came out, he saw a great crowd, and pitied them, and restored the sick to health. But when the evening came, his disciples approached him, saying, This place is a desert, and the hour now late. Dismiss the crowd so that going into the villages they may buy food for themselves." "They have no need to go away," remarked Jesus in reply. "Give them victuals yourselves." "We have nothing here," they responded, "except 5 loaves and 2 fishes." "Bring those to me," he said. And he ordered the crowd to recline upon the grassy places, and taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, looking up to heaven, he blessed, and then breaking, he distributed the loaves to his disciples, and the disciples among the crowd. And they all partook and were satisfied. And of the broken pieces remaining, they picked up 12 full bags. Now those who had eaten numbered about 5,000, besides women and children. He then immediately instructed his disciples to embark in the boat and to precede him to the other side, until he could dismiss the crowd. When he had sent the crowd away, he went up the hill privately to pray. And during the evening he was there alone, while the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was against them. But about 3 o'clock in the morning he came towards them, walking upon the sea. And his disciples, seeing him walking upon the water, were terrified, exclaiming, "It is a phantom!" and called out for fear. Jesus, however, at once spoke to them, saying, "Take courage, I live, be not afraid." Peter in reply said to him, "Master, if you live, order me to come to you upon the waters." "Come," said he. Peter accordingly got out of the boat and walked upon the water towards Jesus. But seeing the strength of the wind, he became afraid, and beginning to sink, he exclaimed, "Master, save me!" Jesus at once holding out his hand, lifted him up, and said to him, "Faint heart, why did you hesitate?" And when they had entered the vessel, he lulled the wind. Then those in the vessel coming to him paid homage, saying, "You most assuredly are a son of God." And having crossed, they arrived in the land of Gennesaret. And the people of that place, recognizing him, sent round the whole of the neighborhood, and brought to him all those who suffered from sickness, and begged that they might only be allowed to touch the hem of his cloak. And as many as touched him were restored to health. Chapter 15. Professors and Pharisees from Jerusalem then approached Jesus, inquiring, "Why do your disciples transgress the tradition of the elders? For they do not wash their hands when they eat bread." "Why," asked Jesus in reply to them, "do you transgress the command of God by means of your own tradition? For God commanded, 'Honor your father and your mother,' and 'He who neglects father or mother, let his end be death.' But you say, 'If anyone should say to his father or mother, What I might assist you with is consecrated to God,' then he need not assist his father or mother. And thus you set aside the command of God by your tradition. You hypocrites! Well did Isaiah prophesy about you when he said, 'This people come near to me with their mouth, and honor me with their lips. But their hearts run away from me, so in vain do they pay me homage, teaching for doctrines the commands of men.'" Then having called the crowd to him, he addressed them, saying, "Listen and understand. What goes into the mouth does not corrupt the man, but what comes out of his mouth does corrupt him." His disciples, however, approaching him, said, "Do you not see that the Pharisees were shocked when they heard your assertion?" But he replied, "Every plant that has not been planted by my heavenly Father shall be uprooted. Let them alone. They are blind guides of the blind, but when the blind guide the blind, both will fall into a ditch." Peter then making answer said to him, "Explain this puzzle to us." But Jesus replied, "Are you ignorant even yet? Do you not know that everything going into the mouth proceeds to the stomach, and is from there evacuated? But what come out from the mouth proceed from the heart, and corrupt the man. For there come from the heart wicked thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, perjuries, blasphemies. These are what corrupt the man, but to eat with unwashed hands does not corrupt the man." When Jesus removed from there, he proceeded to the district of Tyre and Sidon. And there a Canaanitish woman of that part, running, called out to him, saying, "Pity me, Master, Son of David. My daughter is horribly possessed with demons." But not a word did he answer her. His disciples then advanced and begged him to relieve her, because she calls after us. In reply, however, he said, "I was not sent to other than the lost sheep of Israel's house." But she, approaching, paid him homage, saying, "Master, help me." "It is not right," was his reply, "to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs." "Most true, Master," she said. "Yet even the dogs feed upon the crumbs falling from their master's table." "Noble woman," exclaimed Jesus in reply to her, "how firm your faith! Let it be even as you desire." And her daughter was restored from that very hour. And when Jesus removed from there, he came along the shore of the Sea of Galilee, and ascending the hill, he sat down. Great crowds then approached him, bringing with them the lame, blind, dumb, maimed, and many others, and they threw them down near the feet of Jesus. And he restored them, so that the crowd wondered, observing the dumb speaking, the maimed made sound, the lame walking, and the blind seeing, and they praised the God of Israel. Jesus then, calling his disciples to him, said, "I feel pity for the crowd, because they have now stayed with me 3 days, and they have nothing to eat. I do not wish to send them away starving, for fear they should faint on the road." And the disciples asked him, "Where can we procure bread enough in a desert like this to satisfy such a crowd?" "How many loaves have you?" Jesus asked them. 7, and a few small fishes," was their reply. He accordingly ordered the crowd to be reclined upon the ground, and taking the 7 loaves and the fishes, giving thanks, he broke and handed to his disciples, and the disciples to the crowd. And they all ate and were satisfied. And of the broken pieces left over, they afterwards gathered up 7 baskets full. And those who had partaken numbered 4,000 men, besides women and children. Then having dismissed the crowd, he took the boat and came to the neighborhood of Magdala. Chapter 16. The Pharisees and Sadducees then coming to him, tried him by asking him to show them a sign from heaven. In response, however, he told them, "When evening comes, you say, 'Sign of fine weather, for the sky is fiery.' In the morning it will be stormy, for the sky is fiery and threatening. You pretenders! You know how to read the face of the sky. Why not the signs of the times? This depraved and corrupt race are in search of a sign, and no sign shall be given to it other than the sign of Jonah the prophet." And leaving them, he went away, and upon reaching the other side, his disciples found that they had forgotten to bring bread. Jesus then addressing them said, "Look out, and take care to keep free from the ferment of the Pharisees and Sadducees." But they, reflecting, said among themselves, "It is because we have brought no bread." Jesus, perceiving this, however, said, "You skeptics! Why do you debate among yourselves because you have not brought bread? Besides, do you not know nor remember the 5 loaves for the 5,000, and how many bags you collected, nor the 7 loaves for the 4,000, and how many baskets you gathered up? Why do you not understand that I spoke not to you concerning bread, but about avoiding the ferment of the Pharisees and Sadducees?" They then fully comprehended that he had not told them to guard against the ferment of the bread of the Pharisees and Sadducees, but about avoiding their teaching. Now when Jesus arrived at the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do men say that the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptizer, others Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Then Simon Peter replying said, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Jesus answering said to him, "You are happy, Simon Bar-Jonah, because flesh and blood have not revealed it to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I also tell you that you have said it, and upon that rock I will build my church, and the gates of the grave shall not overpower it. And to you I will give the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you may bind upon earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you may dissolve upon earth shall be dissolved in heaven." He then enjoined his disciples to tell no one that he was the Messiah. From that time Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and endure much from the elders, chief priests, and professors, and be murdered and raised up the third day. But Peter, taking his hand, began to remonstrate with him, saying, "Mercy on you, Master! This will never happen to you." Turning round, however, he said to Peter, "Depart from me, you enemy! You are a stumbling block to me, because you do not reflect upon the thoughts of God, but of men." Addressing his disciples, Jesus then said, "If anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross, and follow me. But whoever wishes to save his life shall lose it, and if he should lose his life for my sake, he shall find it. For what would it benefit a man if he gained the whole world, but should lose his life? Or what will a man give in exchange for his life? For the Son of Man will come in the future in the majesty of his Father, accompanied by his angels. And then he will reward every one in proportion to his actions. I tell you indeed that there are some of those standing here who shall not taste of death until they see the Son of Man entering his own kingdom." The end of chapters 13 through 16. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapters 17 through 20 of the Gospel according to Matthew, from the New Testament in Modern English, translated by Farrar Fenton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapter 17. About 6 days afterwards, Jesus took Peter, James, and John his brother, and went with them up a high mountain privately, and he was transfigured in their presence. And his face shone like the sun, while his garments became white like light. And there appeared Moses and Elijah conversing with him. Then Peter, addressing Jesus, said, "Master, how delightful it is for us to be here! If you wish, we will make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was still speaking, a shining cloud suddenly floated around them, and a voice from the cloud said, "This is my Son, my beloved, in whom I delight. Listen to him." And the disciples, hearing it, fell upon their faces and were terrified. Jesus, coming, however, touched them and said, "Arise, and be not in terror." Then looking up, they saw no one except Jesus alone. And coming down from the mountain, Jesus enjoined them to report that vision to no person until after the Son of Man is risen from the dead. His disciples then asked him, "Why do the professors then say that Elijah must come first?" "Elijah indeed will come first and reform all," he answered. "But I tell you that Elijah has already been, and they did not recognize him. On the contrary, they did with him what they pleased, and in the same way the Son of Man will be treated by them." The disciples then fully comprehended that he spoke to them about John the Baptizer. And when they came near to the crowd, a man approached him, kneeling to him and saying, "Master, have pity upon my son, for he is epileptic and suffers terribly. He frequently falls into the fire, and often into the water also. And I brought him to your disciples, but they were not able to cure him." Then Jesus said in reply, "What an unbelieving and perverted race! How long must I remain with you? How long must I support you? Bring him here to me." And Jesus reproved him, and the demon departed from him, and the boy was cured from that hour. The disciples afterwards approached Jesus privately and asked, "What was the reason why we could not cast that one out?" "The reason was," Jesus answered them, "your want of faith. For I assure you, if you possessed faith like a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, 'Be removed from here to there,' and it would be removed, and to you nothing shall be impossible. But this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting." And as they were traveling in Galilee, Jesus remarked to them, "The Son of Man is about to be delivered into the hands of men, and they will murder him, but he will be raised up the third day." And they were deeply grieved. Then when they entered into Capernaum, the tax collectors came to Peter and said, "Does not your teacher pay the temple tax?" "Yes," he answered. And when he entered the house, Jesus said to him before he spoke, "What do you think, Simon? From whom do the kings of the earth take tax or toll? From their own children or from other people?" "From other people," said Peter. "The sons are therefore free," said Jesus to him. "But so that we may not aggravate them, go and cast a fishing line into the sea, take the fish that first comes up, and on opening its mouth you will find a stater coin. Taking that, give it to them for you and me." Chapter 18. About that time the disciples approached Jesus, inquiring, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" Then Jesus, calling a child to him, placed him in the midst of them, and said, "I tell you indeed, that if you do not turn back and become like those children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever therefore may humble himself like this child, he is the most exalted in the kingdom of heaven. And if any accept one such child for my name's sake, he accepts me. But if he cause to sin one of the least of such who believe in me, it would be better for him that a great millstone should be hung around his neck and be sunk into the depth of the sea. Woe to the whole world because of stumbling blocks! It is necessary for stumbling blocks to come, but woe to the man by means of whom they are set up. If even your hand or foot leads you to stumble, cut it off and fling it from you. For it is far better for you to enter into life maimed or lame than to have 2 hands or 2 feet, to be thrown into the enduring fire. And if your eye tempts you to sin, pluck it out and throw it from you. It is better for you to enter into life with but 1 eye, than having 2 eyes to be hurled into the fire of Gehenna. See that you do not slight one of these little ones. For I tell you that in heaven their angels always gaze upon the face of my Father who is in heaven. What do you think? If it should happen that a man possessed 100 sheep, and one of them strayed, would he not leave the 99 upon the hill, and go in search of the wanderer? And if he finds it, I tell you indeed that he rejoices over that one more than over the 99 which did not go astray. In the same way, it is the wish of my Father who is in heaven that not one of these little ones should be destroyed. If your brother ever wrongs you, go and remonstrate with him while you are by yourselves. If he should listen to you, you will have won your brother over. But if he will not listen, take 1 or 2 others along with you, so that by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses the whole affair may be settled. Then if he will not listen to them, report it to the assembly. And if he also refuses to listen to the assembly, let him be to you just as a heathen and a tax farmer. I tell you indeed that whatever you may settle upon earth shall be settled in heaven. And if you forgive upon earth, it will be forgiven in heaven. I tell you further that if 2 of you agree together upon the earth concerning anything for which you ask, it will come to you from my Father who is in heaven. For where 2 or 3 gather together for the sake of my name, I am there in the midst of them. Then Peter approached him and asked, "How often must my brother wrong me, and I forgive him? For 7 times?" "I tell you not 7 times merely," Jesus answered him, "but on the contrary, until 70 times 7. Because of this, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a particular king who decided to settle accounts with his officials. And on his beginning to balance, one was brought to him who was indebted to the extent of 10,000 talents. And as he possessed nothing with which to refund it, his master ordered him to be sold, along with his wife and children and everything he had, so that a liquidation might be effected. The official therefore, falling down, implored him, saying, 'Master, be patient with me, and I will repay you all.' The master of that official then took pity upon him, released him, and overlooked the debt. That selfsame official, however, on going out, met one of his fellow officials, who owed him 5 pounds, and he seized him by the throat, exclaiming, "Pay me all you owe." Therefore his companion, falling at his feet, implored him, saying, "Wait a little while, and I will repay you." He would not, however, but sent the debtor to prison until he should repay the amount due. Then his fellow officials, seeing what had taken place, were greatly grieved, and going to their master, they related the whole of the particulars. Then the master, calling him forward, said to him, "You contemptible scoundrel, I remitted to you the whole of that debt when you asked me. Would it not have been little enough for you to have pitied your fellow official?" His infuriated master accordingly handed him over to the jailers until he should refund the whole of his debt. In like manner my Father, the Heavenly One, will do to you, if you do not every one from your hearts pardon your brothers. Chapter 19. Then it occurred that when Jesus had finished these discourses, he removed from Galilee and went into the borders of Judea across the Jordan. And great crowds following him, he cured them there. And the Pharisees came to put him to the test, and they asked him, "Is it legal for a man to divorce his wife for any fault?" In reply to them he asked, "Have you not read that the one who made them from the beginning male and female, and said, 'For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother, and shall cling to his wife, and they two shall become as one person'? They are therefore no longer two, but a single body. What then God has united, let it not be separated by man." "Why then," they asked, "did Moses order the giving of a decree of divorce and separation?" "Moses," he answered them, "having regard to the grossness of your natures, allowed you to divorce your wives, but it was not so from the beginning. I therefore tell you that if anyone dismisses his wife, unless for fornication, and marries another, he commits adultery." His own disciples then remarked, "If this is the condition of the husband and wife, marriage would not be bearable." Proceeding, however, he told them, "All cannot accept this doctrine, indeed none but those to whom it is granted. Still there are single bedders who were born so from their mothers, and there are single bedders who have been made so by men, while there are others who keep themselves single for the kingdom of heaven's sake. The one who can avail himself of it, let him do so." Then children were brought to him, in order that he might lay his hands upon them and pray. But the disciples forbade them. Jesus, however, said, "Allow the little ones, and do not prevent their coming to me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven." And having laid his hands upon them, he went away. Now it happened that one approached him and said, "Teacher, what beneficent act shall I do in order that I may secure everlasting life?" "Why," he said in reply to him, "have you asked me about beneficence? Beneficence is single. There is but one alone who is beneficent. But if you would enter into life, keep the commands." "How many?" he asked. Jesus replied, "Do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not commit perjury, honor your father and mother, and love your neighbor as your own self." "All these," said the young man in reply to him, "I have observed from my childhood. What more do I need?" "If you wish to be perfect," Jesus then said to him, "go away, sell all your possessions, and hand over to the poor, and you will secure a treasure in heaven, and then become a follower of mine." Having heard that advice, however, the young man departed greatly grieved, for he was the owner of vast possessions. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "I tell you indeed that the wealthy will enter into the kingdom of heaven with difficulty. I can tell you more. It is easier for a camel to pass through a narrow doorway than for a wealthy man to gain admittance to the kingdom of God." When the disciples heard this, they were profoundly astonished, exclaiming, "Who then can be saved?" Jesus, however, fixing his eyes upon them, replied, "By human power this is impossible, but by divine power all is possible." "Why," remarked Peter in reply, "we have left all and followed you. What then will be for us?" "I tell you indeed," said Jesus to them, "that you who followed me, in the new birth when the Son of Man will sit upon the throne of his majesty, shall then sit upon 12 thrones, reigning over the 12 tribes of Israel. And all who forsake houses, or brothers, or sisters, or father or mother, or children, or lands on account of my name, will receive 100 times more, and shall inherit everlasting life. But many of the first will be last, and the last first." Chapter 20. For the kingdom of heaven is like a farmer who went out in the early morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. When he had agreed with the workmen for a denarius the day, he sent them into the vineyard. Then going out again at 9 o'clock, he found others standing idle in the marketplace, and he said to them, "You go also into my vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right." They accordingly went. Afterwards, going out about noon, and at 3 o'clock, he did the same. Then going out about 5 o'clock, and finding others standing, he asked them, "Why do you stand here idle all the day?" "Because no one has hired us," was their reply. He said to them, "Then you also go into the vineyard, and whatever may be right I will pay." When the evening arrived, the owner of the vineyard said to his manager, "Call the workmen, and pay them their wages, beginning from the last onward to the first." And those engaged about 5 o'clock received each one a denarius. Then when the earliest hired hands came up, they concluded that they would receive more. But they only received each one a denarius. But on taking it, they grumbled against their employer, exclaiming, "Why, these last comers have only worked 1 hour, yet you have made them equal to us who have borne the weight of the day and the scorching heat." "My good fellow," he answered one of them, "I do not wrong you. Did you not bargain with me for a denarius? Take your wages and go. I intend to give this last comer the same as yourself. Am I not allowed to do what I like with my own, or is your eye malicious because I am good-natured? In the same way the last may be first, and the first last." Then Jesus, going up towards Jerusalem, took the 12 disciples privately aside on the way, and said to them, "We are now going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests and professors, who will condemn him to death, and deliver him over to the heathen to be insulted, and flogged, and crucified. But the 3rd day he will rise again." Then the mother of the sons of Zebedee approached him with her sons, and kneeling, asked him to grant her a favor. "What do you wish?" he asked her.
"Promise,"
she said to him,
"that these my 2 sons may sit, one upon your right, and the other upon your left in your kingdom."
"You know not what you ask," said Jesus in reply. "Are you able to drink the cup which I am about to drink, and to be baptized with the baptism I shall be baptized with?" "We are able," was their reply. Then he said to them, "You shall certainly drink of my cup, and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with. But to sit upon my right and upon my left is not mine to grant, except to those for whom it is prepared by my Father." When the 10 heard this, they were indignant about the 2 brothers. But Jesus, calling them to him, said, "You know that the rulers of the heathen lord it over them, and their strong ones oppress them. But it must not be so among you. On the contrary, whoever desires to be promoted among you, let him be your attendant. And whoever may desire to take rank among you, let him be your servant. Just as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give up his own life as a ransom for many." When they were leaving Jericho, a great crowd followed him, and 2 blind men who were sitting by the roadside, learning that Jesus was passing by, called out, exclaiming, "Have mercy upon us, Master, Son of David!" And the crowd ordered them to be silent, but they merely called out the louder, exclaiming, "Pity us, Master, Son of David!" Then Jesus, standing still, spoke to them and asked, "What do you wish me to do for you?" "Master," was their reply, "that our eyes may be reopened." Jesus, full of pity, accordingly touched their eyes, and at once they saw again, and they followed him. The end of chapters 17 through 20. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapters 21 through 24 of the Gospel according to Matthew, from the New Testament in Modern English, translated by Farrar Fenton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapter 21. Now when they were nearing Jerusalem and had come to Bethphage at the foot of the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent forward 2 of his disciples, saying to them, "Go into the village before you, and you will find an ass tied ready, and a colt along with her. Loosen and bring them to me. And should anyone speak to you about it, say in reply, 'The Master has need of them,' and at once he will send them." And all this occurred in order that the statement might be verified which was delivered through the prophet, saying, "Say to the daughter of Zion, See, your king comes to you humbly, and sitting upon an ass, with a colt, a foal of a beast of burden." His disciples then went and did just as Jesus had ordered them, leading the ass and the colt, upon which they placed their cloaks, and he seated himself upon them. And the mass of the people spread their own cloaks along the road, while others plucked branches from the trees, and scattered them upon the path. And the crowd going on before, and following in the rear, called out, exclaiming, "Hosanna to the Son of David! Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord! Hosanna from the highest!" And when he had entered Jerusalem, all the city became excited, asking, "Who is he?" To this the crowd made reply, "He is Jesus the prophet, who comes from Nazareth of Galilee." Then Jesus entered the temple of God, and sent out of the temple all the buyers and sellers, and overturned the tables of the money brokers, and the stands of the pigeon dealers, and told them, "It is recorded, 'My house shall be called a house of prayer,' but you have turned it into a den of thieves." They also brought blind and lame people into the temple, and he cured them. But the chief priests and professors, observing the miracles which he performed, and hearing the young men cheering and exclaiming in the temple, "Hosanna to the Son of David!" they became mad with indignation, and asked him, "Do you hear what these are saying?" "Yes," said Jesus in reply to them. "Have you never read that, out of the mouths of children and sucklings I have obtained praise?" Then leaving them, he went out of the city into Bethany, and there lodged for the night. Now in the early dawn, while returning to the city, he became hungry, and seeing a fig tree by the roadside, he went to it, but found nothing upon it except leaves. He accordingly said, "Never from now let more fruit grow upon you." And at once the fig tree began to wither. And the disciples, seeing it, wondered, exclaiming, "How quickly that fig tree has dried up!" "I tell you truly," Jesus answered them, "if you possessed faith and never doubted, you could do not only what has been done to the fig tree, but more. Were you to say to this hill, 'Remove and be flung into the sea,' it would be done, and all that you ask believingly in prayer, you shall receive." Now on his entering the temple, the chief priests and elders of the people approached him while he was teaching, demanding, "By what authority do you act in this way? And who gave you that authority?" Jesus, replying to them, said, "I also will ask you just one question, which if you can answer me, I in return will tell you under whose authority I am working. The baptism of John, whence was it? From heaven or from men?" They accordingly consulted among themselves apart, saying, "If we should reply, 'From heaven,' he will ask us, 'Why then did you not believe him?' But if we should say, 'From men,' we must reckon with the public, for all regard John as a prophet." Returning then to Jesus, they said, "We do not know." "Neither will I," said Jesus in reply to them, "tell you by whose authority I am acting. But what do you think? A man had 2 sons, and coming to the elder one, he said, 'Son, go and work today in my vineyard.' 'I will not,' was his answer, but he afterwards repented and went. Then going to his second son, he said the same. I go, father, was his reply, but he did not go. Which of these two did the will of his father? The first, they replied. Jesus, continuing, said to them, I tell you indeed, that the extortioners and harlots will precede you into the kingdom of God. For John came to you on a mission of righteousness, and you put no faith in him. But the extortioners and the harlots believed in him, while you, looking on, did not repent after all to believe him. Listen to another illustration. A particular landowner planted a vineyard, fenced it round about, and in it dug a wine vat and erected a watchtower. Then he let it out to tenants and went off upon a journey. But when the season arrived for the fruit to be ripe, he sent his servants to the cultivators for the rents. The tenants, seeing the servants, maltreated one of them, murdered another, and stoned a third. He sent again, and a larger number than on the first occasion, but they were treated in the same way. Afterwards he sent his own son to them, saying, They will respect my son. The tenants, seeing him, however, said among themselves, This is the heir. Come on, let us murder him and seize his estate. Laying hold of him, they accordingly kicked him out of the vineyard and murdered him. Therefore, when the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those tenants? They answered him, In their wickedness he will end them according to their deserts, and will let out his vineyard to other tenants who will pay him at the appointed time that which is his due. Jesus then said to them, Have you never read in the Scriptures, a stone which the builders rejected, that has been fitted as the chief keystone? It came from the Lord, and it is wonderful in our eyes. I therefore tell you that the kingdom of God shall be taken from you, and will be given to a nation that produces its fruits. And whoever falls upon this stone shall be broken, but upon whoever it falls, it will crush him to dust. And when the chief priests and Pharisees heard his parables, they perceived that he spoke about themselves. But when they desired to apprehend him, they dreaded the public, who held that he was a prophet. Chapter 22. Jesus, addressing them again and speaking in parables, said, The kingdom of heaven is like a king who prepared a wedding banquet for his son, and he sent his officers to collect those who were invited to the marriage, but they declined the invitation. Then he again sent other officers, commanding, Say to the invited, Consider that I have prepared my banquet, my bullocks and fat calves are killed, and everything is ready. Come then to the marriage. But treating the matter with contempt, they went off, one to his own farm, and another to his shop, while the others, seizing the officers, maltreated and murdered them. The king, on learning this, became furious, and sending his troops, he destroyed those murderers and pillaged their city. He then said to his officers, The marriage is ready, but those invited were unworthy of it. Go out, therefore, to the main roads, and as many as you can find, bring them into the marriage. Those officers, going out into the main roads, accordingly collected all they could find, both bad and good, and the wedding was filled with guests. But the king, entering to look at the guests, he observed a man who was not wearing a marriage robe. And he said to him, How, my good fellow, did you get in here without a wedding robe? He, however, remained silent. The king then said to his attendants, Tie him hand and foot, take him and fling him into the darkness without. There will be the weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few chosen. The Pharisees then went and held a consultation among themselves, how they might ensnare him in a discussion. And they sent to him some of their own pupils along with the Herodians, who said, Teacher, we see that you are true, and that you teach the way of God in truth, caring nothing about anyone, because you do not look at human position. Therefore tell us, what do you think? Is it right to pay tribute to Caesar or not? Jesus, however, perceiving their wickedness, said, You impostors! Why do you try to entrap me? Show me the tribute coin. They accordingly produced a denarius. He then asked them, Whose portrait and inscription has it? Caesar's, was their reply. Return, he then told them, Caesar's own to Caesar, and God's dues to God. And hearing this, they were astonished, and leaving him, they went away. During that same day, the Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, approached him, asking,
"Teacher, Moses said, 'If a man dies childless, his brother shall marry his widow and shall raise up seed for his brother.' There were in our part 7 brothers. And the first, after marrying, died childless and left the woman to his brother, and the second in turn to the third, up to the 7th. And after them all, the woman also died. In the resurrection, therefore, to which of the 7 will she be wife? For all of them had her." "You are in error," said Jesus in reply to them, "through not comprehending the Scriptures nor yet the power of God. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as angels of God in heaven. Respecting the resurrection of the dead, however, have you not read the statement from God to you which says, 'I am the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob'? God is not the God of the dead, but of the living." And the crowd, hearing this, were filled with admiration at his teaching. When the Pharisees learned that he had silenced the Sadducees, they collected at once. And one from among them, a lawyer, in order to test him, asked him the question, "Teacher, which commandment of the law is most important?"
Jesus answered him, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your intellect. That command is first and most important, but the second is equal to it. Love your neighbor as yourself. In these 2 commands are comprised the whole law and the prophets." Now while the Pharisees were assembled, Jesus questioned them, saying, "What do you think about the Messiah? Whose son is he?"
"David's,"
was their reply.
"How then,"
asked he, "could David, under the influence of the Spirit, call him Lord, saying, 'The Lord said to my Lord, Be seated at my right hand until I make your enemies a stool for your feet'? If therefore David calls him Lord, how can he be his son?" And none were able to answer him a word, neither dare any one from that time debate further with him. Chapter 23. Jesus, then addressing the people and his own disciples, said, "The professors and the Pharisees have usurped the place of Moses. All therefore that they tell you to observe, observe and do. But do not imitate their doings, for they do not practice what they preach. On the contrary, they pack up heavy and unendurable loads upon men's shoulders, but they take care not to touch them with their own fingers. All their actions are done merely for the sake of being seen by men. They widen their phylacteries and extend the fringes of their cloaks. They delight to secure the places of honor at banquets, the principal seats in the synagogues, the salutations in the markets, and to be addressed by men as, 'My Lord, my Lord.' You, however, must not be called teacher, because I alone am your teacher, and you are all brothers. And upon earth call none your father, for one is your Father, he who is in heaven. Neither select leaders, for one is your leader, the Messiah. But the greatest among you shall become an attendant, and whoever sets himself up shall be brought low, and whoever humbles himself shall be exalted. Woe to you, play-acting professors and Pharisees, because you lock up the kingdom of heaven in the face of mankind, while you yourselves neither enter nor allow those arriving to go in. Alas for you, play-acting professors and Pharisees, because you devour the property of the widows by the pretense of long prayers, for which you will receive a heavier punishment. Woe to you, play-acting professors and Pharisees, who scour the sea and the desert in order to secure one convert, and finding one, you make him a son of the pit twice as much as yourselves. Woe to you, blind guides, who say, if one swears by the temple, it is nothing, but if a man swears by the gold in the temple, that oath must be kept. Fools and blind, which is the greater, the gold or the temple which sanctifies the gold? You say, if one swears by the altar, it is nothing, but if a man swears by the gift upon it, that oath must be kept. Fools and blind, which is greater, the gift or the altar that sanctifies the gift?
A man, however, who swears by the altar swears by all that is upon it. And whoever swears by the temple swears by the one who inhabits it. And whoever swears by the heaven swears by the throne of God and the one who sits upon it. Woe to you, canting professors and Pharisees, because you pay tithes on mint, dill, and cumin, ignoring the more important statutes of the law: humanity, sympathy, faith. These you ought to have observed, and not to have cast the others aside. Blind guides, who strain out a gnat and gulp down a camel. Woe to you, hypocritical professors and Pharisees, because you wash the outside of the cup and the plate, but fill the inside with extortion and injustice. Blind Pharisee, cleanse first the inside of the cup and the plate, so that their outside may also become clean. Woe to you, shamming professors and Pharisees! You are just like whitewashed tombs, pretty enough outside, but inside full of dead men's bones and every kind of corruption. So you too outwardly appear to men to be religious, but inwardly you are crammed with false pretense and every form of lawlessness. Woe to you, professors and Pharisees, you hypocrites! Because you erect monuments to the prophets, decorate the tombs of the martyrs, and say, "If we had lived in the days of our forefathers, we would not have aided them in shedding the blood of the prophets." Thus then you give evidence against yourselves that you are the sons of the murderers of the prophets. Ha! Fill up then the measures of your fathers. Serpents, spawn of vipers, how can you escape the fury of hell? Lo, I will therefore send you prophets and thinkers and scholars, and some of them you will murder and crucify, while others you will flog in your synagogues and drive from town to town, in such a way that all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of the just Abel down to the blood of Zachariah, son of Berechiah, whom you assassinated between the entrance of the temple and the altar, may rest upon you. Indeed, I tell you that all these shall come upon the present generation. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, who massacred the prophets and stoned those sent to her. How often would I have gathered your children together, like the bird that collects her nestlings under her wings, and you would not. Now see your house left to yourselves. Yes, I tell you that after this you shall not see me again until you say, "Bless him who comes in the name of the Lord."
Chapter 24. Then Jesus, leaving the temple, was proceeding on his way, when his disciples came up to point out the buildings of the temple. Jesus then said to them, "Do you not see all these? I tell you indeed, that a stone will not here be left upon a stone, otherwise than in ruins." Afterwards, when he was resting upon the Mount of Olives, his disciples approached him privately, asking, "Tell us when this will be, and what is the signal of your presence and the completion of this age?" "Take care," said Jesus, in reply to them, "that none may deceive you. For many will come in my name, asserting, 'I am the Messiah,' and will lead many astray. Then you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. Attend and fear not, for all must come, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and plagues and frequent earthquakes. All these, however, only begin the agonies. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and will murder you, and you will be hated by all the heathen through my name. And then many will abandon it, and will betray one another and hate one another, and many false prophets will make their appearance, and multitudes will be misled. And through the abounding lawlessness, sympathy for the many will be chilled. But whoever holds out to the end will be saved. The good news of the kingdom, however, shall be proclaimed throughout the whole empire as a witness to all nations. And then the end will come. When therefore you shall see the desolating beast, foretold through the prophet Daniel, take up his position on holy ground, let the reader comprehend. Then let those in Judea fly to the hills, and he who is upon his balcony not descend to take anything from his house, and the man in the field not turn back to take up his cloak. But alas for those with child and those who nurse in those days! Pray, however, that your flight may not come during the winter, nor upon a rest day, for there shall then be widespread affliction, such as has not been known since the beginning of the world until now, no, nor will ever be known again. And if those times were not cut short, not a man would be saved. But for the sake of the chosen ones, those times will be cut short. Then if any should say to you, Look, the Messiah is here, or there, do not believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will make their appearance, and will give out great and terrible omens, so as to mislead, if possible, even the chosen. However, I have forewarned you. Therefore, if they tell you to, Look, he is in the desert, go not out. Come into the private apartments, do not believe it. For as the lightning bursts out with a flash from east to west, in like manner will the presence of the Son of Man be. Where the corpses are, there the vultures will assemble. But immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will fail to give her light, the stars will fall from the sky, the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then will appear the signal of the Son of Man in the sky, and all the tribes of the earth shall mourn when they see the Son of Man coming upon the clouds of the heaven with power and full rectification. And he will send out his messengers with a loud and powerful bugle, and they will collect all his chosen from the four winds, from end to end of the heavens. Now learn from the fig tree its lesson. When its branches become soft and the leaves sprout, you recognize that the summer is near. In the same way, you also, when you see all these, know that this is near, aye, close to the gates. I tell you indeed that this present generation shall not pass away until all these arrive. The heaven and the earth may fade away, but my declarations will never pass away. About the exact time, however, and the hour, none knows, not even the messengers of heaven, but my Father alone. And as in the days of Noah, so will also be the appearance of the Son of Man. For as they were in the days before the flood, eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day arrived for Noah to enter the ark, and they would not understand until the flood came and carried all away, so also will be the appearing of the Son of Man. Then 2 men may be in the field, one is taken and one is left. 2 women may be grinding in the mill, one is taken and one is left. Keep guard, therefore, for you know not what hour your Lord may come. But recognize this, that if the master of the house had known at what time the thief would come, he would have kept awake and not permitted his house to be dug through. On account of this, be ready, because it may be that the Son of Man will appear at a time you do not expect. Who then is the faithful and prudent servant whom his master can place over his household to give them their provision with promptitude? Happy will be that servant if his master shall find him thus engaged upon his arrival. I tell you indeed that he will appoint him over all his possessions. But if some unfaithful servant should say in his heart, My master delays his arrival, and should begin to ill use his fellow servants, and eat and carouse with the drunkards, a master of that servant will come upon a day he did not expect, and at an hour he is not thinking of, and will dismiss him and send him about his business to associate with the vagabonds. Then there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The end of chapters 21 through 24. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapters 25 through 28 of the Gospel according to Matthew, from the New Testament in modern English, translated by Farrar Fenton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Mark Penfold. Chapter 25. Then the kingdom of heaven may be likened to 10 bridesmaids, who, having received their lamps, went out to meet the bridegroom. And 5 of them were wise, and 5 were foolish. Those who were foolish, taking their lamps, took no oil with them, but the prudent ones took oil in their flasks along with their lamps. While, however, the bridegroom delayed, they all slumbered and slept. But at midnight a shout was raised, Now the bridegroom comes, go out to meet him. All those maidens thereupon got up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish then said to the prudent, Give us some of your oil, because our lamps are going out. But the prudent maid reply, Lest there is not enough for us and for you, run rather to the shops and buy for yourselves. While, however, they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in to the wedding, and the door was shut. The other maidens afterwards came calling out, Sir, sir, open the door for us. But his answer to them was, No, indeed I tell you that I do not know you. Therefore keep awake, because you know neither the day nor the hour when the Son of Man will come. For it is like a man leaving his home, who called together his confidential servants and entrusted them with his effects. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each in proportion to his abilities, and took his departure. Then the man who had received the 5 talents went and traded with them, and increased them into 5 talents more. And the receiver of the 2 likewise increased his into 2 more. But the man who had been entrusted with 1 went and dug a hole in the ground, and there hid his master's money. Now after a long time the master of those servants returned and went through their accounts. And the one who had the 5 talents came bringing 5 talents beside, saying, Sir, you entrusted me with 5 talents. But look, I have increased them to 5 talents more. Well done, you good and faithful servant, exclaimed the master in reply. You have been faithful over a little, so I will entrust you with much. Share in your master's success. Then the one who had accepted the 2 talents said, Sir, you deposited 2 talents with me, but see, I have gained with them 2 talents more. Very good, you useful and trusty servant, said his master in reply. You have been faithful with a few. I will place you over many. Share in your master's success. Then the man who had accepted the single talent said, Knowing you, sir, to be an avaricious man, reaping where you had not sown, and raking up where you had not scattered, being afraid, I went and hid your talent in the ground. See, here is your own. You ungrateful idler, said his master in reply to him. Granted that you knew I reaped where I had not sown, and raked up where I had not scattered. You ought then to have paid my money into the bankers, and on my return I could have got my own with interest. Now take from him that talent, and give it to the man who has the 10 talents. For to the man who possesses much shall be given, and he shall have superabundance. But from him who possesses not, even what he has shall be taken from him. And he flung the good-for-nothing fellow into the darkness without, where there is wailing and gnashing of teeth. But when the Son of Man appears in his majesty, and all his angels with him, then he will take his seat upon the throne of his majesty, and collect all nations before himself, and will separate them from one another as a shepherd divides the sheep from the goats. And the sheep he will place upon his right hand, and the goats upon his left. The king will then say to those upon his right hand, Come, you approved of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, and you entertained me. Naked, and you clothed me. I was exhausted, and you attended me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Then the righteous will answer him, saying, When, master, did we see you starving and fed you, or thirsty and gave you a drink? When did we see you a stranger and entertained you, or naked and clothed you? When did we see you sick or in prison and came to you? And their king will reply to them, I tell you indeed, that whenever you did it to one of these my poorest friends, you even did it to me. Then he will say to those upon the left, Begone from me, you accursed, into enduring fire, which is prepared for the devil and for his angels. For I was starving, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not entertain me, naked, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not visit me. Then they too will answer, saying, When, master, did we see you hungry, or thirsty, or forlorn, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not help you? In reply to them he will then say, I tell you indeed that since you never did it to one of the least of these, you never did it to me. And these he will dismiss into a long correction, but the well-doers to an enduring life. Chapter 26. Now it occurred that when Jesus had finished all these discourses, he remarked to his disciples, "Do you know that after 2 days the Passover is to be celebrated, and that the Son of Man is now being betrayed to be crucified?" After this, the chief priests, the professors, and the elders of the people assembled in the court of the high priest, who was named Caiaphas, and consulted among themselves as to whether they could arrest Jesus by means of a trick and assassinate him. But they said, "Not during the festival, for fear a riot should break out among the people." When Jesus was in Bethany, at the house of Simon the leper, a woman who had an alabaster jar of very valuable perfume came and poured it upon his head as he reclined. But the disciples, on seeing her, became indignant, saying, "To what purpose is all this waste? For this might have been sold for a good deal and given to the poor." Jesus, perceiving it, however, said to them, "Why do you trouble the woman, seeing that she has acted nobly towards me? Besides, you have the poor always with you, but me you have not always. For she, having poured this perfume upon my body, has done it preparatory to my burial. I tell you indeed that wherever these glad tidings shall be proclaimed throughout the whole world, what she has done will be told as a memorial of her." Then one of the 12, named Judas Iscariot, having gone to the chief priests, asked them, "What are you willing to give me, and I will deliver him to you?" They accordingly weighed out for him 30 pieces of silver, and from that time he sought a fitting opportunity to betray him. At the first day of the unfermented bread, the disciples came to Jesus, asking him, "Where do you wish us to make preparation for you to eat the Passover?" "Go into the city," he said, "to such an one, and say to him, 'Our teacher says, my time is near. I wish to observe the Passover at your house with my disciples.'" The disciples accordingly did as Jesus instructed them, and they made ready for the Passover. When the evening arrived, he reclined along with the 12, and while they were eating, he said, "I tell you indeed, that one from among you will betray me." And they were deeply grieved, and each of them began to say, "I am not the one, am I, Master?" And in reply he said, "One who has dipped his hand with me into the basin, he will betray me. The Son of Man will indeed depart as it was written about him. But woe to that man by means of whom he is betrayed! Well would it have been for him if he had never been born." Judas the traitor then answering said, "It is not I, is it, Master?" "You have said it," was his reply. Then, as they were eating, Jesus took a loaf, and having offered a blessing, broke it and distributed it to his disciples, saying, "Take it, eat it. This is my body." And taking the cup and offering a blessing, he gave it to them, saying, "All of you drink of it, for this is my blood, that of the new settlement, which is shed for the removal of many sins. I tell you, however, that at present I will not drink of this produce of the vine until that day when I shall drink it with you new in the kingdom of my Father." Then singing a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives, where Jesus said to them, "All of you will be ashamed of me tonight, for it is written, 'I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of his flock will be scattered.' But after my resurrection I will go before you into Galilee." Peter, however, replying to him, said, "If all are ashamed of you, I will never be ashamed." "I tell you indeed," said Jesus in reply to him, "that in this very night, before a bugle sounds, you will thrice deny me." "Even if it should be necessary for me to die with you," Peter declared to him, "I will never deny you." And in this way spoke all the disciples. Jesus afterwards accompanied them into a garden called Gethsemane, and said to the disciples, "Sit you here, while I go yonder to pray." And taking Peter and 2 of the sons of Zebedee along with him, he began to be distressed and overwhelmed. He then said to them, "My soul is very full of grief, even to death. Stay here and watch with me." Then going forward a little, he fell upon his face, praying, and said, "My Father, if it is possible, take this cup from me. Yet not according to my desire, but according to yours." Then returning to the disciples, he found them sleeping, and remarked to Peter, "So it seems you are not strong enough to keep awake a single hour with me. Watch and pray so that you may not fall into temptation. Your spirit indeed is willing, but the body weak." Again, for a second time, going away, he prayed, saying, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to pass by me without my drinking it, let your will be done." On returning, he found them again asleep, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them and going away again, he prayed for the 3rd time, making use of the selfsame words. He then came to his disciples and said to them, "Sleep on now to the end and refresh yourselves. The hour is near when the Son of Man will be betrayed into the hands of sinners. Arise, let us go forward, for my betrayer is now at hand." And while he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, came along with a great crowd armed with swords and staves from the chief priests and elders of the people. Now his betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The man I shall kiss, that is he. Arrest him." And at once approaching Jesus, he said, "I hope you are well, Master," and fervently kissed him. Jesus answered him, "Friend, against whom have you come?" Then rushing on, they seized hold of Jesus and arrested him. Thereupon one of those who were with Jesus, stretching out his hand, drew his sword and struck the officer of the high priest, cutting off his ear. Jesus, however, said to him, "Return your sword into its place, for those who take the sword will fall by means of the sword. Or do you imagine that I am not able to call upon my Father, and he would even now provide me with more than 12 armies of angels? How then could the Scriptures be fulfilled that it must come about in this way?" Jesus, at the same time addressing the crowd, asked, "Have you come out against me with swords and staves to arrest me like a robber? Day after day I have been sitting teaching you in the temple, and you did not arrest me. But all this has occurred in order that the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled." All the disciples, then leaving him, fled. Then those who had arrested Jesus took him away to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the professors and elders were collected. Peter also followed at a distance, as far as the court of the high priest, and entering, he sat down along with the officers to see the end. Now the chief priests and the whole Senate sought out false witnesses against Jesus, so that they might kill him. But they could not procure them, although many liars came forward. At last, however, 2 liars came up, asserting, "This fellow said, 'I am able to demolish the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days' time.'" Then the high priest, jumping up and addressing him, exclaimed, "Have you no reply? What do these men witness against you?" But Jesus kept silent. The high priest thereupon said to him, "I put you upon your oath before the God of life, so that you must answer us. Are you the Messiah, the Son of that God?" "You have stated the fact," Jesus made answer. "I tell you more. In the future you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of that power and advancing upon the clouds of the heaven." "He blasphemes!" exclaimed the high priest as he tore his robes. "What need have we of further evidence? Why, now you have heard his blasphemy. What do you decide?" "He is liable to be put to death," was their reply. They then spat in his face and beat him upon the head, while others struck him with their staves, saying, "Tell us, Master Messiah, who are those who assault you?" Now Peter was still sitting outside in the court, and a girl, coming to him, said,
"Why, you are also with Jesus the Galilean."
He denied it, however, before them all, declaring, "I do not know what you are talking about." Then, going out into the vestibule, another saw him and said to those there,
"This fellow was with Jesus the Nazarene."
With an oath he again denied it, saying,
"I know nothing about the man."
After a little while, however, the bystanders approached and said to Peter,
"You are most certainly one of them, for your dialect proves it plainly."
He then began to curse and swear, declaring,
"I do not even know the man!"
And immediately the bugle sounded. Peter then remembered the words of Jesus addressed to himself. "Before a bugle sounds, you will thrice deny me." And rushing out, he wept bitterly. Chapter 27. When the dawn arrived, the chief priests and leaders consulted together against Jesus, so that they might effect his death. And having manacled him, they led him away and delivered him over to Pontius Pilate, the governor. When Judas, who betrayed him, saw that he was condemned, he was horrified, and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and leaders, exclaiming,
"I have sinned in betraying innocent blood."
"What is that to us?" was their reply. "Look out for yourself." He accordingly flung down the silver in the temple, ran away, and departing, he hanged himself. And the chief priests, picking up the money, said, "It is not allowable to add it to the sacred gifts, seeing that it is the price of blood." Then, having consulted respecting it, they bought with it the potter's field, for the purpose of burying foreigners. That field has consequently been called the blood field down to the present time. Thus was fulfilled the statement delivered through Zechariah the prophet, which says, "And I took the 30 pieces of silver, the amount of the valuation at which I was valued by the children of Israel, and gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord directed me." When Jesus was brought before the governor questioned him, asking, "Are you the King of the Jews?" "You say so," Jesus made answer. When, however, he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he answered nothing. Pilate then said to him, "Do you not hear how many things they charge against you?" However, he never offered to say a single word by way of defense, so that the governor was very much surprised. At festival time it was customary for the governor to liberate one prisoner for the people, whomsoever they desired. And they had then a notorious prisoner named Barabbas. Pilate, addressing them, therefore asked, "Whom do you wish me to discharge, Barabbas or Jesus, whom they call the Messiah?" For he saw clearly that it was merely on account of malice that they had delivered him. And while he was sitting in the court of justice, his own wife sent a message to him, saying,
"Have nothing to do with this just man, for I have endured much in a dream this morning on account of him."
The chief priests and elders, however, incited the mob to demand Barabbas and execute Jesus. But the governor, addressing them, asked, "Which of the two shall I set free for you?"
"Barabbas," was their reply.
"What then," asked Pilate, "shall I do with Jesus, whom they call the Messiah?"
"Let him be crucified,"
was their unanimous reply. "Why?" he asked. "What crime has he committed?" In reply, they yelled out more savagely than ever,
"Let him be crucified!"
Pilate then, seeing that he gained nothing by it, but, on the contrary, that the riot increased, took water and washed his hands in the presence of the mob, saying, "See, I am innocent of the blood of this just man. Look to it yourselves." Then, in reply to him, the whole mass of the people shouted out,
"Let his blood be upon us and upon our children."
He then discharged Barabbas for them, and after flogging Jesus, he delivered him over to be crucified. The governor's soldiers then taking Jesus into the praetorium mustered all the troops. And dressing him up, they robed him in a scarlet cloak, and platting a crown of thorns, they placed it upon his head, and put a cane in his right hand. Then kneeling before him, they shouted out in ridicule, "Ha! Long live the King of the Jews!" They also spat upon him. And taking the cane, they struck him with it upon the head. Then when they had scorned him, they took the cloak from off him, and clothed him in his own garments, and led him away to be crucified. When they were going out, they met a Cyrenian, Simon by name, whom they forced into their service in order that he might carry his cross. On arriving at a place known by the name of Golgotha, which means skull field, they offered him sour wine to drink, mixed with gall, but tasting it, he would not drink. Then, having crucified him, they cast lots for the division of his garments among themselves, and sitting down, they kept guard over him there. And over his head they placed his written indictment, thus: "This is Jesus, the King of the Judeans." They also crucified 2 robbers along with him, placing one on the right hand and the other on the left. The passers-by also insulted him, wagging their heads and calling out, "You demolisher of the temple, and rebuilder of it in 3 days, now save yourself if you can. If you are a son of a god, come down from the cross." In the same way, the chief priests with the professors and elders derided him, saying, "He saved others, he cannot save himself. If he is the King of Israel, let him come down from the cross, and we will believe in him. He trusted upon God, let him now rescue him if he wants him, for he asserted, 'I am a son of God.'" And even the robbers who were crucified along with him reproached him in the same way. Then, from midday until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, darkness spread over all the land. And about 3 o'clock, Jesus called out with a loud voice, exclaiming, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani!" That is, "O my God, to what have you forsaken me?" And some of the bystanders, on hearing that, remarked, "He seems to call for Elijah." And at once one from among them ran, and taking a sponge, filled it with sour wine, and placing it upon a cane, gave him a drink. But the others called out, "Let him alone! Let us see whether Elijah will come and save him." But another, taking a spear, pierced his side, when blood and water came out. Jesus, however, having again called out with a loud voice, resigned his spirit. And then the veil of the temple was torn into 2 from the top to the bottom, while the earth was shaken and the rocks were split. The tombs were also opened, and many bodies of the saintly sleepers were raised. And coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they entered the holy city and were seen by many. Then the captain and those who were along with him, guarding Jesus, perceiving the earthquake and these other events, became dreadfully frightened, exclaiming, "In very truth, this was a son of a god." And many women who had followed Jesus from Galilee, attending to him, were looking on from a distance. Among these were Mary the Magdalene, and Mary the mother of James and Joses, as well as the mother of the sons of Zebedee. When the evening arrived, there came from Arimathea a rich man named Joseph, who had himself also been taught by Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered the body to be given up. Joseph accordingly taking the corpse, wrapped it in a fine linen shroud, and placed it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn out in the rock. And having rolled a large stone to the door of the tomb, he went away. Mary the Magdalene and the other Mary, however, kept sitting opposite the tomb. Now on the morning following the preparation for the festival, the chief priests and the Pharisees assembled before Pilate, stating, "Sir, we remember that this impostor said, when he was alive, 'After 3 days I shall rise again.' Order therefore the tomb to be secured until the 3rd day, for fear his disciples, coming, should steal him and say to the mob, 'He arose from the dead.' Thus the last imposture will be worse than the first." "Take a guard," exclaimed Pilate in reply. "Go away, secure it as you like." They accordingly went and secured the tomb, sealing the stone in company with the guard. Chapter 28. After the Sabbaths, towards the dawn of the day following the Sabbaths, Mary the Magdalene and the other Mary came to examine the tomb. And a violent earthquake was then felt, for an angel from the Lord, descending from heaven, approaching the stone, rolled it from the door and sat upon it. His aspect resembled lightning, and his garments were white like snow. And in dread of him the guards trembled and became as dead. The messenger, addressing the women, however, said, "You need fear nothing. I know that you are looking for Jesus the crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he told you. Come, look at the place where the Lord lay. Then go quickly, tell his disciples that he has risen from the dead, and at once he will precede you into Galilee. You will see him there, as I have told you." In fear mingled with intense delight, they accordingly took their departure with all speed from the tomb, and ran on to report to the disciples. But Jesus suddenly met them, saying, "Good day to you." And they, approaching him, seized his feet and paid him homage. "Fear not," said Jesus to them. "Go on and acquaint my friends, so that they may return to Galilee, where they shall see me." Now while they proceeded, some of the guards at the same time going into the city reported all these events to the chief priests. They accordingly assembled with the elders, and after consultation together, they gave the soldiers a large sum of money, instructing them to say that his disciples came at night and stole him while we were asleep. And if this tale should be heard by the governor, we will make it right with him and set you at your ease. They accordingly took the money and did as they were directed, and that tale is current among the Judeans until the present time. The 11 disciples, however, went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had directed them, and seeing him, they paid him homage, but some doubted. Then Jesus, approaching them, spoke, saying, "Every power has been given to me in heaven and upon earth. Go you out, therefore, and instruct all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And then I am with you through all time, even until the completion of the age." Amen. The end of chapters 25 through 28, and the end of the Gospel according to Matthew, from the New Testament in modern English, translated by Farrar Fenton. Recording by Mark Penfold.